quantity of pork, and then we calculated producer surplus, meaning basically the amount of money people are making by selling pork. And now what we're going to do is we're going to say, what if one of those curves shifts? In particular, what if the pork checkoff runs an advertisement like it normally does in an attempt to increase pork demand? Now, I've been very lucky that the pork checkoff, they're going to start running a commercial, I think, 2 or 3 weeks from now. It's not on primetime TV, but you may see it like between 6 and 8 o'clock, 5 and 7. Weekday afternoons. This is their advertisement. We're going to look at it and say, well, what if it really does increase pork demand? How does that change the supply and demand for pork? So let's look at an advertisement that they're going to be running soon.
Bacon. You know, bacon gets a bad rap these days. Bad for this, bad for that. Well, I don't buy it. I eat bacon every day, at every meal. Pounds of it. I serve my guests bacon. Oh, I drink bacon. Even like a little bacon in my shorts. Some slices. Nice. And that's just some of bacon's many uses. Bacon makes a great gift, a great corsage for prom dance dates, and my wife makes these charming little dresses out of bacon. Heck, even wear one myself when the time's right. And it usually is. When I'm blue, I tell bacon my troubles. I'm a little mopey today, bacon. And when I ain't blue, well, I like to sing my bacon a little tune. Bacon, 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 I'm making the moves on you. You're bacon. Sometimes I hire dancers. Most times. Bacon, 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 we're making the moves on you. You're bacon. So when you're sitting down to your breakfast pancakes or waffles, you know, why don't you lay down an extra slice or 2 of bacon? But save one for me. I might just put it down my shorts. Most likely will. Bacon, anybody?
Good stuff, good stuff.
Yeah, that's an actual commercial.
Yep. It's actual commercial.
Yeah,
No, it's going to be shown on TV the next 2 weeks. It won't show very long the next 2 weeks. Okay, now when they do these things, often they want to know what is the impact of this on the pork market. Is this actually going to make people who raise hogs and sell pork in the grocery stores more money? Well, just some simple supply and demand curves, along with some projections of what the advertisement might do, can help you answer these questions. And that's what we're going to simulate that kind of thing. And this is the kind of thing that firms often hire, not just ag economists, but consulting firms to answer. Let's first quickly review where we left off last time. We said there was a pork market, and we had a supply curve, and we had a demand curve. We're still not exactly sure what supply and demand exactly means. It takes a lot of familiarity, a lot of practice with it. You're still a little confused and uncomfortable, but if you become the classes as it goes. And we said that you can graph a supply curve, you can graph a demand curve, and you can solve for where the 2 curves cross. And we did some things where we figured out that, well, price is going to end up where the 2 curves cross. And we used algebra. We set supply equal to demand. And we calculated equilibrium quantity is 5.2 million hundredweight pork per month. And then we took that equilibrium quantity, put it into the supply equation, put it into the demand equation. It spit out the equilibrium price of 147.39 per hundredweight. So in these conditions, we predict that the pork market will mostly be selling pork, retail pork, at a 147.39 hundredweight, and we sell about 5.2 million hundredweight each month. We also saw, and you don't quite understand why yet, but we also saw that this right triangle from 90 to 147 to the 5.2 million and back. That area is a thing called PS, producer surplus. That's basically how much money people are making in the pork market. Everybody from hog farmers to the vets who help the hog farmers to the grocery stores. And we can calculate the area of that triangle by 1/2 times base times height, and we get this producer surplus. That's what we were laid out last time. And we did all these calculations. What we're going to do now is say, well, what is the purpose of an advertisement? How does this change this picture? This is not really the pork market. This is our picture of the pork market. It's a metaphor for the pork market. Sometimes not a great one, sometimes a pretty decent one. And what we want to do now, we're continuing on our worksheets. In the last class, we started on question 54, and we answered 54, and we answered 55, and now we're going to 56. And 56 says, suppose that due to pork television advertisements, the intercept on the pork demand equation increases from 210 to 220. We're going to see in a little bit that this demand curve, we've already kind of seen it before, it captures consumer behavior. And suppose we think that after running this advertisement, or suppose we look back on the advertisement's actual effect, and we conclude that what happened was people did go to the store more and they bought more bacon. Such that if we want a new equation that captures new consumer demand for pork, all we want to do is go to this demand equation and we change the 210 and we make it 220. And I'm going to write this in a minute. We're just going to change 210 to 220. And then we've already shown how to calculate the equilibrium, how to do the producer surplus. So I'm not going to do the calculations again, but I'm going to show you the answer. But I want you to do this. Turn back the page to 54. On 54, we computed using algebra the equilibrium price of 147 and the equilibrium quantity. Then I have that big chart where it says retail pork market. And I want you to go ahead and graph the supply and demand curve for pork. And you can just kind of go off this. But don't worry about this being exact for now. We'll do better graphs later. But to draw a demand curve, we know our intercept's going to be at 210, the old demand curve. And we know we only need 2 points. So the demand curve, we have 1 point at 210 and 0. And then the other point at 147 and 5.2 million. So I will just go to that chart area, draw one big circle at 210, and another one at the coordinate of price 147 and quantity 5.2 million. Get those 2 points and connect them and label it D for the day. Then do the same thing with supply. We only need 2 points. It's a linear line. We know the intercept is 90, so we draw 1 point at 90, 0. The other point is that same other point for demand, because it's where the 2 cross. So a point at 90, a point where the curves cross, connect those 2, and you have a supply curve. When I want you to draw things exact, I'm going to give you much simpler equations. You don't have to worry about fractions.
Is the whole chart the supply curve, or is it the intercept?
Yeah. The whole curve from here all the way up here is the supply curve. Because it's this equation. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah. Now we're going to draw a new demand curve. So stay on that graph. And now we're going to say consumers like bacon more because of that commercial. And we say that the demand curve intercept goes from 210 to 220. It's a parallel shift up. So now all you need to do is to get the point 220 and draw a parallel to the old demand curve. The new intercept is 220. Don't need another point because you'll just draw a parallel to the old demand curve. And we label the new demand curve D prime.
What does the prime mean?
It's just our way of saying the new one. I don't know why we do it that instead of a 2, but it's just always been done like that.
You do it here, would it be like D squared?
Unless you make a superscript, you can do a subscript. Just D prime's new. Yeah, you got me. Okay. And what happens, I'm sorry, what happens with this new demand curve? This was our old equilibrium, and that is our new equilibrium. So we're going from here to here. It's at a higher price, and it's at a higher quantity. So if you just look where those two curves cross, it's at a higher price and a higher quantity. We know that graphically. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go over here. And on number 56, it says after the intercept on the demand curve goes from 210 to 220, determine how the equilibrium price quantity changed at this new equilibrium. And we're just going to write the answer to that. You solve it using the exact same methods we did to solve for the old equilibrium. I'm just changing. You don't need to change this because it's implied in the question. But what's different now is the supply curve is exactly the same. We're not going in there and changing any number in the supply curve. In the demand curve, the intercept just goes up by 10. And if you set supply equal to demand and solve for it, you're going to find that the equilibrium price is going to increase to, the new price is 152.17 per hundredweight. So it was 147, it goes up to 152. And the equilibrium quantity goes up to 5,652,173 hundredweight per month. Keep in mind, these are all real supply and demand curves that we're dealing with. So we're pretending like a consulting firm that takes real supply and demand curve and is projecting real changes. You see, quantity went up too. It was 5.2 million, now it's 5.6 million. Again, just using the same algebra as we used before. Number 57, says how does producer surplus change as a result of the advertising? And when you calculate producer surplus using the new numbers, you find that producer surplus rises to 176,697,797 per month. That's how much more money people are making in the pork market, not including the advertising costs. Not including ADV for advertising costs. The producer surplus goes up to, it was 149 million per month, now it's 176 million per month. It goes up, and so if that increase over time is more than what it costs to run those commercials, this was a good thing for the pork industry in general. This thing doesn't give you perfect answers to whether advertising is good or not, but it's the best you can do. Amazingly simple. This is why you learn algebra. going to 58 now. And this is one of those things, this is almost identical to some of the questions we did in notes from last time, so I'm just going to give you the answer to it. And you can go back and calculate yourself, see if you're doing it right. Number 58 is trying to check you to make sure you understand why equilibrium price is the way it is. It says at the old equilibrium before television advertisements, so when the demand curve intercept was 210, if price was 100 instead of the equilibrium price, quantity supplied would equal a little under a million hundredweight. I only had hundredweight add per month to make sure we're doing all the units right. That's quantity supplied. Quantity demanded would equal 9,166,000. Price of 100 is much lower than the equilibrium price. So consumers want a lot, but people only want to sell a little. So that's an imbalance. We have an excess demand. Calculate that excess demand. We take the quantity demanded minus the quantity supplied, and we get 8,257,576 centiweight per month. Consumers want a lot more than people want to sell. There's excess demand, and if consumers want a lot, and people only want to sell a little of that price, what's going to happen to the price? It's going to go up. The consumers are trying to bid up the price of it. That's just there to remind you. What I want to do here is I want to help you understand a little bit better what this demand curve is, how it works. Actually, another thing I'm going to do. In the notes from last class, we had sections A, B, C, D, and it was notes to go along these worksheets. I think we ended E. What's the last one y'all have?
I have E.
E.
Yeah. What producer surplus?
So you could make this F. This is another section there where I want to help you understand exactly why producer surplus denotes profits. This is one of those things, it's not a real easy way to explain it, and it's something once you hear, you really got to think about something. And so it might not make sense at first. There's a section F.
Yes.
So here, I just want to think more about producer surplus. I want to help you understand why that right triangle is profit for an entire industry. And think about if you're a seller, and let's just suppose there's a good you're going to sell. Let's say the minimum price you will charge for selling a good Thinking about the minimum price of some good you're gonna sell, the minimum price you'll sell it at. In our general theory of prices, we said the minimum price is the opportunity cost of producing that good, and the maximum price is the buyer's value. We're thinking here about that minimum price. Minimum price you charge for selling a good is the opportunity cost of producing the good. Minimum price you would charge for a good is the opportunity cost of producing that good. You don't want to take a loss. You want a price at least equal to or higher than what it costs. Suppose that cost is $5. That opportunity cost of producing that good is $5. So as long as you can get $5 or more for that good, you won't lose money. This is something no one will disagree with. If you sell it for $10, you make $10 minus $5 equals, pause for dramatic effect, $5. Now that's not something I really need to tell you. You know that. But if you get this, then you're halfway to understanding producer's surplus. I'm going to draw a supply curve of price. I'm going to put that little triangle, producer's surplus, and try to show you why it represents this very thing. Profit. I'm going to have a graph. Like the supply and demand, but I'm only going to have supply. I've got quantity there, price on the y-axis. You have a supply curve. There's an equilibrium price and an equilibrium quantity. And at that equilibrium price, they're producing an equilibrium quantity. That equilibrium comes from a demand curve in here, but I'm going to leave the demand curve out. Be simple. And producer surplus was that right triangle. That's what we said was profits for the whole pork industry. Okay, a few extra things, and if you think about it, you'll see why this triangle actually really does represent profit for an entire industry. You've got S here for supply. It's also another type of curve. I'm going to put comma, MC. It's also a marginal cost curve. And you don't know what that is. What we're saying is supply curve equals marginal cost curve. And marginal cost is cost of making the last unit. That won't make sense to you, but think about it like this. There's a lot of different, let's just think about hog farmers. There's a lot of different hog farmers out there. Some have an advantage where they can produce at a low cost. Some are not as efficient and produce at a higher cost. When prices are really low, the only people who can and will produce hogs are people who are the most efficient. People who have a very low cost of production. To produce this unit is low. This unit a little higher but low. This unit a little higher but low. As price goes up, people who are less efficient all of a sudden can make money producing hogs. So they do that. It costs them more to produce hogs. They're represented up here, where the cost of producing this new pork that comes onto the market is much higher. The marginal cost increases the more you produce. You'll have to know this later in class, but not now. But here's a quick, you know this already. Think about studying for a test. And the first 30 minutes you study are really, really productive. Just by studying 30 minutes, you probably increase your grade from a 30 to a 60. Study another 30 minutes, it's not going to be as productive. You're not going to get another 30 points. You might increase your grade on test by 15 points. Increase your studying from an hour to an hour and a half, you may only increase your grade by 5 points. You know this, the more you study, the less efficient you become at increasing your grade. And we find this anywhere. You raise hogs, when hogs are little babies, when cows are little babies, they grow really fast. The older they get, the slower they grow. So to get more meat out of the animal, it costs more as they get older because they're less efficient. Corn on the ground. The first bit of fertilizer you put on the corn, it really responds to it. It just jumps up. Keep applying more fertilizer, you get less out of the fertilizer. That fertilizer becomes less efficient the more you use. And so to produce more and more corn, it costs you more and more. So that's why it's going up like this. Now this is the final thing. Producer surplus. We know it's that triangle, but it's that triangle because it is this. Price minus marginal cost summed over all Q sold. In this market, QE is the amount of pork produced sold. And the amount of money made in there is the price producers get minus their cost of production. So if you go price minus marginal cost of the first one, price minus marginal cost of the second one, price minus marginal cost, price minus marginal cost, keep going over and over and over until you get the last 100 pounds of pork produced. What you find is that price minus cost is just that triangle. That's why it works. It's very simple. Yeah.
That word is very insane.
Sum. It says producer surplus equals P price minus MC marginal cost, comma, sum over all Q sold. I know all that is just it's a lot at once. You're going to see it again. It's really, honestly, you never really understand this until you teach it. But I have to, I can't just give you this triangle and say, well, who cares why it really works the way it is. But someone who really wants to understand it, you can think about it, talk to me, and you get it.
Can you do that little PS thing one more time? I didn't understand that. Just, what is it?
Oh, okay. Well, in this market, everybody's getting this price, equilibrium price.
All right.
But people have different costs of production.
Okay.
Some people produce at a low cost,
Mm-hmm.
and their profits are price minus their low cost.
Okay.
Other people, very inefficient producers, it costs them a lot. Their profits are the price they get minus their cost of production. So you take every 100 pounds of pork produced, and you take the price it's sold at minus the cost of producing it, and you sum it over all those 100 pounds, it's going to be that right triangle. It's a hard thing to grasp, I know. But I've learned if I spent 2 weeks trying to make you understand it, it just doesn't. If you don't want to understand it, you're not going to do it. So I try not to dwell too much on it. And you will know what you have to understand with just that. Now, I want to start talking a little bit about this demand curve. We've drawn the demand curve, and the demand curve slopes down, and I want to talk a little bit about why. And where I'm transitioning to now is on the worksheets. I'm going now to the worksheet that has number 13, question 13. So you've got a lot of worksheets. They have different question numbers. One of those questions is number 13. I want to talk about why a demand curve slopes downward. What exactly does it mean? And to help you understand this, I'm going to show two clips from The Simpsons that does a really good job of this. So just watch and pay attention.
Forbidden donut.
Well, well, finishing something?
Homer, did you eat that donut?
Your wide behind won't save you this time. Hey, Bart.
Hey. Wait, doesn't my father have the right to a fair trial?
Oh, you Americans with your due process and fair trials. This is always so much easier in Mexico. All right, very well. We'll have the trial tomorrow at the stroke of midnight. Till then, you're going to spend the day in hell.
That wasn't so bad.
I don't understand it. James Cobo went mad in 15 minutes.
Look at these bills. Chain for elephant. Shots for elephant. Oversized decorative poncho.
Technically, it's for a giraffe, but I think I can let it out a little.
Well, these bills will have to be paid out of your allowance.
You have to raise my allowance to about $1,000 a week.
Then that's what I'll do, smart guy.
Can we see the elephant? We'll pay you money.
For a nice time now. Wait a minute. This gives me an idea.
Here's a better sign, Dad.
I don't have time to read it. Just give me the gist of it, son. Your kid flew 5 feet. They counted the ride. $2.
Well, that was never 5 feet.
This reminds me of that fat van I used to ride to work.
Look at this, Marge. $58 and all of it profit. I'm the smartest businessman in the world.
Stampy's food bill today was $300.
Marge, please, don't humiliate me in front of the money. Millhouse saw the elephant twice and wrote him once, right?
Yes, but we paid you $4.
Well, that was under our old price structure. Under our new price structure, your bill comes to a total of $700. Now, you've already paid me $4, so that's just $696 more that you owe me.
Get off our property.
Another exciting section of notes. This is actually what hell is like. So we're section G. This is gonna be a lot simpler.
Is that H2 over there?
Yeah,
The one
okay,
before that
okay,
was
okay, yeah, you're right,
You
you're right.
skipped half F. if we
In
were
my,
H.
in my notes, it was H, and I
Okay.
tried to, where y'all have H1 and H2, it's supposed to say E. Thank you.
We're on I there.
We're on I. Well, no, we're really on E, right?
Yeah, really. We missed
No,
it.
we did E on the 27th. Then today we started with F. Then we skipped to
We
H.
didn't do 1 or 2 on E. We just did E.
Why don't y'all number this, that was best for you. I apologize for this. Let's just call this the next section.
Sounds good to me.
Instead of drawing one supply curve, I'm going to have one demand curve. There's a price on the y-axis and there's a quantity on the x-axis. We already have this curve that goes down. We've already played with it. We've seen how it works. But we want to understand it a little better. Like the supply was a marginal cost curve, demand is a marginal value curve. MV equals marginal value the value of one more unit. Then Homer was funny because we normally think when you first eat a donut, it's really, really good. We like it a lot. The second one, yeah, it's good, but not so much. The third one, okay, it's good, but I'm kind of getting sick of it. The fourth one, I really don't want to eat this. The fifth one, you know where we're going with this. The value keeps going down. And so if someone's selling us donuts, we may be willing to pay a high price for the first one, but to get us to buy a lot of donuts, you've got to offer us a very low price. So because this marginal value declines the more you consume, that's why we only consume more at a lower price. I'm just going to do this. I'm going to have P high, P superscript H, P superscript L below. And at a high price, we consume very little. And pH is, price is high, the quantity is low, and the price is low. Quantity is high. Basically saying, when price falls, consumers buy more.
Is that why buying in bulk is cheaper?
It can be. Sometimes buying in bulk has to do with this thing called price discrimination, where they're trying to target people who buy a lot versus people who buy a little. So it's kind of, but not really. Then, now we're going to the number 13, to the sheet that says number 13 on it. And above it, you see a demand curve and you see a chart. And it says retail pork, but in 13 it says, above is a diagram showing old demand curve and new demand curve for cage-free eggs. So just cross out and write in whatever you want. Make it such that on the bottom the quantity is like dozens of eggs. And the price on the y-axis is dollars per dozen. So in this chart, we want price to be the price of cage-free eggs on the y-axis, and the x-axis is cube quantity of cage-free eggs. And here we have one demand curve, D, and D prime. It tells you number 13, an old demand curve, D, and a new demand curve, D prime, which we can think of demand changes, just like the advertising. And this question says, which set of statements accurately describes this change? First, let me ask you, this is consumers. And this is about the value consumers place on cage-free eggs. Does C sound true, the cost of producing cage-free eggs? If it does, you're just not thinking about supply and demand right. In supply and demand, we're separating producers from consumers. Demand is only about consumers, and the enjoyment you get from eggs does not depend at all on the cost of raising eggs for farmers. Certainly you care about price, but you don't even know what the farmer pays to produce these things. C and D, you can just X out. They're not even remotely true because they have to do with the supply curve. So now we're at A and D. Look at A. Consumers value cage-free eggs more, and at the same price will buy more. What this means is if I go in here and do another demand curve that looks like this, does that look like consumers value it more, marginal value, and buy more? Yes. And so A is the right answer. And that is all we need to do for today.